Hi Flosstube, it's Amanda. I'm back again for a Flosstube update. It's been a while. I think my last video was in December. Yeah, so I'm back. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who watched my last video and all the really kind comments and the likes and subscribes. I really felt a warm welcome back to Flosstube. I tried to respond to everybody. If I haven't, it's because I just didn't see your comment. I have run into that lately. Yeah, so I'm back. I've got a lot to go through, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. It's taken me, sorry, I'll try not to say I know a lot of people, not a lot, a couple people mentioned that. I'll try to not to say so much. I make no promises though. So the past couple months, it's taken me a while to come back because it's been pretty rough. We were just sick pretty much the full 2 months of January and February. It's just been sickness after sickness. My daughter, I put her to bed tonight and she's like, I have a sore throat. I'm like, no, another one. So yeah, it is what it is. So that's why it's taken me so long, because either one of my kids were sick or I was sick. Somebody was sick. So I'm back. There were a lot of questions on my last video. I think I answered everybody's question, but I'm gonna just quickly kind of go through a couple of them. And most of the questions were about one of my whips. So I'll go through some of the questions when I get to that one. So one of the questions was, actually, the questions were kind of combined about doing tutorials. One was a tutorial on stitching in hand, and the other one was a framing tutorial. So I will say that I am not equipped to do tutorials. I did a tutorial the last time I did Flosstube, and it was a disaster. I just don't have the equipment. I don't have the time to film them. So I won't be doing tutorials on that, but I can direct you to people who have done tutorials on both those topics. So for stitching in hand, there is a very good tutorial. It's Christy from Crosshatch Quilts. I think that's her channel name. I'll link it below in case I'm not saying the right channel. She does a stitching in hand tutorial, and that's the one that I used. She zooms right in. You can see the holes, like they're like blown up on her fabric, and you can see exactly what she's doing. I've watched a few other tutorials. I think Priscilla and Chelsea did one, and you can't really see what they're doing. You really need to see it up close so that you can see like how you're supposed to maneuver your needle or hold it, or anyways, she has a really good tutorial on that. And then I will just throw in a few things that I do that I haven't seen people suggest with stitching in hand. So with stitching in hand, I know people roll their fabric inward so that they're not like touching the stitching directly. So I still find that my hands, even when I wash them, when I'm holding the fabric for long periods of time, my hands still get, I don't want to say sweaty because they don't, but there's still oil on your hand, residue oil. So what I do is I wear these too because they help with cramping, but I wear these gloves while I'm stitching in hand, and it just protects the fabric so that the oil from my hand it goes on the glove instead of the fabric. What else? Just looking over here. I also use one of these. Now, I've never seen anyone, I'm not saying that there's no one on Flosstube that has used this, but I've never seen someone suggest this for use for stitching in hand. So when I used to stitch in a Q-snap, I used to put the pattern with a needle minder basically right there on my pattern, so I could just basically look, and I'd be looking at the next stitch as I was finishing a stitch. When you stitch in hand, there's nowhere to put your pattern. So I went on Amazon looking for, I don't know, you don't see them very often, but they were trays. They had them when I was a kid, but they were trays that kids used for like crafts and things, and you could basically sit under them, and they had like a lid. And I thought, well, if I could find something like that and it had a lid, I could prop it and put my pattern on that and have it sit over my lap. Well, I found something better. I found this thing here. It's a laptop holder for your lap. So basically this part goes down on your lap, and then this part props up, and then it's basically propped up sitting on your lap, and it's right in view while you're stitching. And then when you're done with your pattern, you can just store it in here. And I actually use it with a magnet board, and it's stuck. I just put the magnet board here, and then I can, you know, put my scissors. I can just magnet my scissors here, put my needles. Anyways, I find it really handy, so I use that. So yeah, go check out Christy from Crosshatch Quilts. And then for framing, I did a search for framing cross stitch, and I know one came up by the Contented Stitcher. I did not watch it though, but I do know that I think I watched maybe like five minutes of it. I have not watched it all the way through, so I can't speak to the video because I haven't watched it. So for me, I frame in two different ways. I either will cut down a ready-made frame from like a Goodwill or I don't know, secondhand store, wherever, antique store, whatever. You can basically cut them down, or I go to Home Depot and buy just trim, although I'm not doing it as much now because the price of anything wood is ridiculous. So I haven't done that in a long time. But you can just buy regular trim, and then to create a rabbit joint, do I have something as an example? I don't. So in a frame, there's always it's called a rabbit joint that it's so that your stitch piece can sit down in the frame. Every picture frame has it, and most people know what I'm talking about. With the trim that you buy, either like quarter round or I don't know, any kind of molding, it doesn't have that kind of joint. You can make a joint like that with a router. I don't have a router. So what I do is I just buy lattice trim, and it's basically, I think you get it in 1 inch and 3/4 inch. I just buy lattice trim and I glue it. I butt it up against the outer end of the trim, and I just glue it. And then you basically have an instant rabbit joint. And that's how I get around the whole not having the tools to make the frame the way it's supposed to be. So those are just kind of my little tips and tricks, but I don't have the equipment to make a tutorial for framing and things like that. It would be very precarious. But go check out those two videos. I'll link them below. So yeah, those were two of the questions that I had. Another question that I had was about doing a craft room tour. I actually have a craft room tour. It's over on Instagram, and I think it's around November of last year, maybe. If you scroll through, I don't have that many videos on my Instagram, so if you scroll through, I think there's a bunch of videos that look like there's a Christmas tree, and then there's one, you'll actually see it's the ironing board. That's the craft room tour. So if you're interested in seeing the craft room tour, you can head on over to Instagram. So I think that was all of the non-whip related questions. So I have a ton of stuff to show, and we're already 9 minutes in. So I'm just gonna start showing what I've worked on in no particular order because these have just been thrown in a bin. So this whip is, and I don't think I have all the patterns with them, so I'll insert pictures when I don't. This is For the Love of Nature from Teresa Kogut, and I think I worked an evening on this. So I think the last time you saw it, I had just kind of this top bit done and like this little bit here, and I just completed the border down to the bottom. So this is where the end of this is where the bottom border will start. So my goal on this piece this year is just to finish the border, and I've changed the colorway from browns to grays. So all of this section here was supposed to be like a brown color, and I've changed it to gray. And I worked I think one evening on that. And most of this is from January, February. I didn't really get a whole lot of stitching done after my last video in December. And I'll save those ones. So this next whip is from Shirova Stitch, and I'm gonna have to insert a picture here to show you what it looks like. And I don't have my board today. So since my last video, I think I had just basically this section here complete, maybe a little bit further. Since my last video, I've worked up and I've done most of her face and hair. I still have to finish the cat. The cat still has some work, and there's some hair kind of that swoops around here. And then I made my way down and I stitched most of the bottom of the dress. And then there's still a bit of dress that comes out here. And then there's a ton of back stitching. So my goal on this one this year is to finish it. And I think I spent 5 evenings on this. So I think it's doable to kind of finish this in another rotation. Well, maybe not because of all the back stitching. I get slowed down by back stitching. Okay, my next whip is my stocking. I feel like I'm just doing a whip braid because I pretty much worked on almost all my whips. Yeah, I don't have I'll put the cover picture in here. It's called, geez, Sweet Dream Stocking, I think it is. I think that's what it's called. I can get it up here. Okay, so since my last video, I had most of Santa done. Since my last video, I've done all the toys in the sack, the curtain, and I've made my way over here, and I've worked on a good chunk of the tree. I only had like a little bit of the tree last time. This is very confetti heavy. I think there's like 6 or 7 shades of green in this tree. So, and this is on my Whipco board twice this year. So the top half is a Whipco gold, and then the bottom half is a Whipco gold. Just the stitching, not the back stitching. So there's that one. And then my next whip is, so this next whip, I have 2 whips that are my focus projects this year. They're both my oldest whips and they're my biggest whips. But every month I have basically mini goals that I want to basically reach on both of them. So this is the first one. And this one, since you last saw it, I've done 5,300 stitches. So let's see if I can get it in view. Actually, I have a board here, but it's really big, but I'm going to try and, it's hard to, let's use all the part threads. So the last time you saw it, I had basically from here down complete, and I've completed from here up since you last saw it. So it's, 5,000 stitches. That's quite a lot. So I've reached the bottom of Cinderella and Prince Charming, and my goal on this is to basically complete, I don't know if you can see the gridding, the two columns a month. So if I complete 2 columns a month going forward, all the cross stitching will be done by July. But then there's a lot of back stitching and a lot of French knots. So hopefully I can get this done this year. We'll see. I'm hoping I can get the back stitching and the French knots done. And this next whip was a WIP that I had a ton of questions on. A ton. I'm gonna try and cover most of them because a lot of them were the same question, but I'll try and kind of go through them quickly. And this is by far my biggest WIP. This is probably the biggest project I've ever worked on. And I have a clip here. That's another thing, stitching in hand. I use these clips to clip my fabric after I roll it so it doesn't unroll. This is all rolled up, that's why it's... Okay, I'm gonna stand back. So since you last saw it, I think in my last video I had just probably half of the stitching done on the cobbler, and I finished that. I started and finished the stitching on the, I think it's called Daily News. I started and finished the stitching on the Needle Workshop, and I started and finished the stitching on the Apothecary. So I'll just kind of come in closer. So I haven't done the back stitching yet because the Q-snap that I normally use to do the back stitching is tied up at the moment. So there's the newsroom. So the only thing that is different, I omitted the, there was like a draped American flag here, and I just left it off because I kind of wanted to keep it Canadian theme. I think, where's the other flags that I did? I think I put one in the bank up here. So I didn't want to have like a mismatch of flags. So I just thought it would look funny to have just like a flag here, a Canadian flag here, and a draped Canadian flag doesn't look very good. So I just left it off. So just quickly, some of the questions I had. The fabric that this is stitched on is 28 count Stormy Gray Jobelin by Witchelt. I will say that it is very difficult to source. I waited a long time before it came back into stock, and at 123 Stitch, I had like a notification on my phone, and this was pre-pandemic, and it took like 5 or 6 months. And if you want to do all 24 buildings, you need a yard of fabric. So that was the other question I got, was how big of fabric do you need? And I would say that all depends on how many buildings you want to stitch. If you want to stitch all of them, you need a yard. And if you want to stitch, you know, just a row, I mean, you'll have to just basically count basically the dimensions of the house, however much space you want to leave between them, and then go from there as to how to calculate your fabric. I know Yarn Tree has a good fabric calculator. The other question I had was about the border. This border is on the Mill Hill Christmas Village Stitch Along Facebook group, and this was from Stephanie Misso So Crafty. She found, like, it was it wasn't a cross stitch pattern, it was just basically like a picture she found, and she made it into sort of a pixelated snowflake, but she shared it on the group. I think someone else asked, how do I keep the houses, I guess, level? And sorry, I'm having an avalanche here. Like, how do I line them up? And I basically just try to align the rooftops somewhat so that, because I don't know if you can see, sometimes down here there's more snow and more sidewalk than there are in others. So I use the rooftops as sort of a guide. So yeah, so my goal on this for this year, so I finished the last two on that row in December. And then my goal for this month is, or for this year, is to stitch one a month. So I've stitched, this was January, this was February. So when the 1st of March comes, I'll start the third one, which I believe is the Cathedral. I'd have to check. because I have a layout here. Actually, this is my layout. That's maybe why I had it out. I did a layout of all where I wanted everything. And at the time, there were only 22 houses, so that's why there's only 5 in the second row and on the bottom. But since then, they've brought out 2 more. So what is the next? Yeah, it's the cathedral, so I was right. But basically, I sort of drew this picture of my layout, and then I calculated how many spaces I wanted in between. I had to kind of tweak it, though. And then I calculated how many snowflakes I would need to go around the perimeter of the piece. So I've met between the Cinderella, I've met one of my WIPCO goals on that, and this is on my WIPCO board 12 times, so I've met two more WIPCO goals. So my hope is to get all the cross-stitching done this year so that I can start beading next year. I'm just going to roll this up quickly so I can put it back in the bag. Okay. And then the last whip that I worked on and was my current whip. I worked on this. I have the pattern. I do have the pattern here. I worked on this last night during the, I'm going to mess up the name, the Fancy Folk Stitch Along. That's a Zoom call that's hosted by Pam, Stitching in the Land of Good Enough. And I joined and my microphone wouldn't work. So I basically just sat there and listened. So if you were on the call last night, I wasn't being antisocial. My microphone didn't work. So hopefully I can get it fixed for next time. That was the first time I've been on that call. So this is the whip that I've been working on recently. And I'm probably going to need the board for this one too, because it's big. Oh, focus. There we go. Okay. So just to give you reference, here's the sashing. The sashing here is this side right here. So since you last saw it, I basically have stitched all of this here. Yeah, pretty much from here down. So I'm at the bottom of the pattern, and there are some kind of blank spaces here because I've been trying to prep this project a bit to take to Stitch North, and any sort of block stitching, I'm gonna fill that in at Stitch North. This here has been kind of problematic because of all the bead spaces that I've had to kind of count to maneuver around, so I didn't really want to do that at Stitch North. I may do more of the sashing at Stitch North, and then up here I think there's more opportunity to kind of outline and then leave the fill in for the retreat. So there she is. My goal on this piece this year is to have all the stitching done from here down. So I think it's doable. Like this took me 7 days to stitch. So, and but by days I mean like evening. I usually get like an hour and a half in the evening to stitch. There was some weekend time in here, which I get a little bit more time on the weekend to stitch. So there it is. And she is stitched on 28 count Summer Sky Jobelin by Witchelt. Okay, so that's the last whip that I worked on, but I had 2 new starts. I had a birthday start, and then I had one, that's how I justified one of my starts. I had a birthday start, and then I had an open spot to bring me up to 10 whips. So let me just find the pattern. So my next whip is this one here. This is Touching the Autumn Sky, and it's not going to focus. Touching the Autumn Sky by Mirabilia. Get the glare out. This is an out of print chart, so it's not very easy to find. And I worked 3 days on it. And this is stitched on 32 count Jobelin by hand dyed by Rolanda. There's no names on her fabric. She just kind of does one-offs. And if you watch my channel for any length of time, you know that I love her fabric. Okay, now we're focused. So I basically completed the majority of her apron, and I started on her underskirt. So she's stitching up pretty fast, this section here, not including her shoes. I can already tell this part's going to be a pain with all the color changes. And this part will kind of go pretty quick because it's all fill-in stitching. Maybe I should outline that and take it to Stitch North. That's a thought. I don't have any goals on this for this year though, so I don't know if I'll finish it or not. Who knows? So that was my first start. And then my other start was this chart by Just Nan. It's called, and I don't know if you can see, you can't really see. It's called Miss Kitty's Dragons, but there's, maybe if I can show you the chart without showing you the chart. It comes with like these little charms, and the charm in the middle is like this little, it's not, this little cat, and then there's dragonflies around it. And I only spent one night on it, so I didn't get very far, but it's not that big, it's very small. It's stitched on 28 count linen by hand dyed by Rolanda. It's like a mauvey, like mauvey purple, and I'm using just floss from my stash. It's I think this was a Gentle Arts, and this is Color and Cotton. So I basically did the outer border and the inner border. So with Just Nan charts, well, at least with this one anyway, there's an order in which you complete things, and then each section, like each of these sections, most of what's in here is specialty stitches. So there's instructions for this corner, and this corner have the same instructions, and the corner for this corner and this corner have the same instructions, and then all in the middle, again, more specialty stitches. So there are cross stitches in there too, but there's a lot of specialty stitches. So, and this is an out of print chart as well. So those were all of my whips, all of my starts. I did purchase a few things because over Christmas I got some money from family members, and it was also my birthday too, so I splurged and bought some PDF charts. But my one piece of haul was this was just February's. There were December and January's, but I've put them away. So I'll show you February. So pretty. This is by hand dyed by Rolanda, and her floss actually reminds me a lot of the Owl Forest embroidery floss. It's very, very pretty. Like the variegation is, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if I can. Yeah, it's just really pretty. So I bought that. And then I don't really have a whole lot. I got this drawn thread chart. It's called Emily's Hope. And I bought this because my mother-in-law's name is Hope, and that's my daughter's middle name. And I like birds. So I will say I'm going to voice a pet peeve of mine, which I don't like to do, but I'm going to do it. Usually the drawn thread, I typically don't gravitate to her charts for one reason. She charts everything in mostly silks, and on this chart, actually, on some of the other charts that I have, she did not do this. She charts them in silk, and then in this chart she's giving the gentle art equivalent. I have 2 other charts where she just gives you the silk. I don't want to stitch something like this in silk. Like, it's, and not to say that I'm not trying to be judgy and saying, oh, this isn't worth silk, but for me, I wouldn't want to spend the money on this. This is a small piece. It would likely stitch, looks like it would stitch up fairly quickly. So, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 silk, needlepoint, 16 needlepoint silks in this piece. That's a pretty expensive chart to kit up. So I appreciate when designers put the DMC equivalents in. I mean, I can convert this myself, like it's not a big deal, but you know, I think it would be nicer for designers to include it. But anyway, that's just, I'm done talking about my pet peeve. So then I bought a ton of charts from, all of these charts from, I'm gonna butcher this, Svetlana Sikar. You guys can, Svetlana Sikar. Hopefully that's not backwards to you guys, but she has a whole series of animals in clothing. And I don't know who it was, if it was, I think it was Melly Ellie Stitches. I don't know if it was her or her sister that gets creeped out by animals in clothes. I love animals in clothes. I think they're the cutest things ever. So this is the bunny, and he's wearing a sweater that has foxes on it. I just thought that was the cutest chart. So there's one. Okay. And then the chipmunk in a little Christmas vest. Cutest thing ever. And then this is an ermine in a Valentine sweater. Like, are you dying right now? I was like dying when I saw these. Okay. And then a fox. And if you can see, he has like a little bunny pin on, I don't know what you call this. I don't know what that is. It's not a scarf. I don't know. Somebody chime in and tell me what that is. And then a little cat. And, oh, there's mice on his little sweater thing right there. A raccoon. Is there anything on his scarf? No, there's nothing on his scarf. A squirrel. And his little purse. I thought that was cute. And he has acorns on the cuffs of his sweater. And a penguin. So I thought they were adorable. I had to get them. So that's what I spent the bulk of my Christmas money on. And then the only other thing I bought since then was this. Again, I'm going to butcher it. Passion Ricamo. And I've been familiar with this designer for a while. I don't think she's doing printed charts, but you can still get all of her charts via PDF on her website. You just send her money via PayPal, and then she emails you the chart. I have to say, I love stitching Fancy Ladies. I'm not a huge fan of the style of her Fancy Ladies, but I did love this piece. What is it called? Merry Little Xmas. I would call it Merry Little Christmas. And it's a mom with her 2 kids. And I'm a real sucker for charts that have a girl and a boy, where the girl kind of looks older, because that's how my family is. My daughter's older than my son, and they're very close in age. Yeah, bought that. And that was it. That's all I purchased since then. So I have met 3 of my WIPCO goals, so I get to start something. I think I said in my last video, so I'm not really doing WIPCO officially, because I'm not following them. I don't even know the numbers that have been called, because all of my goals are annual goals. So my reward isn't basically a line. Every time I complete 3 of my goals on my board, I get to start something and spend 3 days on it. But then I have to put it away. And part of the reason why I'm doing that is so that I have something waiting in the wings for when I finish something. I can you know, I may have like 500 stitches on it or 600 stitches on it, and I can bring it in to my rotation and I'm not starting from scratch. So I have whips sort of in all different phases of completion. So I don't have whips, not all of my whips are in the process of being finished, and not all of my whips are in the process of being started. So that's kind of, I don't know, that was kind of my logic behind doing it that way. So I pulled, I guess it's going to be just a mini stash dive. I don't have that many things, but I pulled some things that I'm considering as one of my starts. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through them. And I don't know, maybe you guys want to vote. So if you've watched me before or even seen my finishes, I love stitching. I love stitching cute animals. I love stitching realistic animals. I love stitching any kind of animal. So I don't have an animal currently in my rotation. So one of the ones that I considered starting was this Luca S kit. I think it's just called Foxes. Yes, Foxes. And it comes with lovely anchor threads. It's already in a project bag, so I just pulled out the cover photo. When you buy a Luca S kit, they come all bobbinated on these cards, and it's all anchor floss, so that's a bonus. The fabric is cardboard, so, and I don't really care for the oatmeal fabric to begin with, but it's Aida and it's cardboard, so I'm not going to be using that. I would put it on kind of this mauvey, you can see mauvey fabric, and I love this. It's not actually that big, so I think it would stitch up pretty quick. Does it give the dimensions? It doesn't. It doesn't give the dimensions, and it may be giving the dimensions, but nothing is in English. Oh, there it is. It's in centimeters though, so that's probably all foreign to you guys. You know what? I live in Canada and I don't even use centimeters. I always use inches. So that's one possible start. The other wildlife start. So I've been seeing 2 people stitch this on Flosstube, and I forget who I saw for it. I think it was Mama Bear Stitchery, Debbie. She started this, and when she started this, I'm like, oh, I have that kit. I should totally start it with her, but I didn't. It's an old sunset kit, and it's called Giants of the Sea. I don't know if you can still get this or not. I'm trying to find a year on it. I got this for Christmas like years. Oh, 1997. There it is. So it's on 14 count Aida, but I won't stitch the Aida. I think I would sup it out for this Lugana. It's kind of a gray rather than a blue. I don't know. I love it. It reminds me of, for a goldfish, I think I would be kind of sad too. So anyways, that's just kind of my thinking. But the other one that I was considering doing, I had a piece of white out here. Okay. It's gonna have another avalanche. So the other one, and I'm blaming Fiber Arts Amy for this, because she showed, so 2 people have done it in the past couple weeks. Is it Needleberry Stitcher? I should write these things down. I'll link her below if I'm totally messing up the name of her Flosstube channel. Her channel is called Needleberry Stitcher, and she went through her entire Mirabilia collection, which is basically every single Mirabilia, and that is out there to own. And I was like, yay, someone else out there that's insane like me. I was like, because, you know, I have a complete collection of Mirabilia patterns because, yeah, I'm nuts, but I'm glad to see that there's more crazy people out there too. Anyways, she was one, and then Fiber Arts Amy also went through her entire collection, which I think was almost all of them. She's done it in a few parts. I haven't watched all of them, but I imagine if she has multiple parts, it's probably all of the charts. And she showed this one, And this one has been calling me for years to stitch. I have it sitting in a bag with all of the charms, except for the one that's not in production anymore. All the charms, all the beads, all the Krynic, all the floss. That was one actually I didn't dekit because I just have wanted to start it. And this is the fabric, and it looks white. It is not white. That's why I pulled this out. It's like a dusky blue. Like you can't really see the modeling. There's very, very subtle modeling in it, but it's like a very light blue. So I really want to start this. And my only issue is I already have like a big, huge lady on the go. And I don't know if I want to start another one, but I'm tempted. I'm really tempted to start her. So that's another contender. The next one that I've wanted to start for years. I want to start so many things. Is Seaside Kingdom. Oh, and this chart is out of print. This is another Mirabilia called Seaside Kingdom. If you guys are familiar with Mirabilia, you probably know all the ones that are out of print. This is out of print also, but it was reprinted a couple years ago. I can't remember exactly when. So you may be able to find this, but I'm not sure. And instead of doing it on the white fabric, I bought this fabric, which is basically a sand and sky fabric. And it's from Sparklies. It's called Kynance. The only thing with stitching it on this fabric, you can't really tell, but the castle is all, it's not stitched, it's outlined. So when you stitch it on the blue, you have to basically fill in all the castle, which is fine. I much prefer it on the blue than the white. So I think it's worth filling in. So that's another contender. And then this one, I only have a couple more and then I'll be done. This one is from, and I can't say this was a kit. And when I say kit, it came with a pattern in the fabric. I can't say that, but I will hold it up. And it is basically a Christmas tree with all sorts of little, I believe they're robins. I could be wrong. And it's the glare. But it's really sweet. It's got Christmas ornaments and there's so many little details. There's a birdhouse and it's full of birds. And then it has this bird down here. I wouldn't stitch this. I would just stitch the tree. My only dilemma is, and again, I'd love to hear feedback. I don't care for the fabric it came with. And it's not even fabric, it's a tea towel. Like it's an actual tea towel, which blows my mind. I'm like, why would you stitch anything on a tea towel? But like, see, there's it's a tea towel. I don't know, I just think it's kind of busy. Like, I just feel like the detail of the birds and all the cute things in the tree. Like there's a basket with little eggs and there's an apple. Like there's so many cute things. You don't see it when it's on that, boxy fabric. So I was considering doing it on either this blue, kind of like a sky, I don't know. It's outside, it's wintertime. I don't know. I was thinking the blue, or basically finding like a fabric, like a flax or something, and sort of this color, and having it on like just a solid piece of fabric that's something like this color. So anyway, I really, the more I look at this, every time I pick it up, I just don't care for this design anyway. So your thoughts? Anyone have thoughts on that? Okay, I've got 3 more that I pulled. 3 more, yes, 3 more. This one, I want to stitch everything in this book. It is, again, it's in French. There are 3 books in this series. Oh, I have one right here. I didn't even realize that. There's another one too. This is, I know this is the 3rd book. I think this one I think was the 2nd book, and then there's the 1st book. And they're all Beatrix Potter patterns. And I think, don't quote me, they're all by Veronique Angier, the same designer that does these patterns. But I could be wrong because I'm not, nowhere does it say, but it definitely is, it's definitely her style. Anyways, it doesn't say, but someone has basically taken the artwork and just basically charted it into cross stitch in different ways. So which one was I looking at? This one. So the one I'm thinking of doing is in this book, and it is, oh, that's the chart. This guy right here, this cute little Peter Rabbit Christmas bunny. So he's cute. I don't think he would take too long to stitch. He's not very big. I always say that, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, it's still not done. But there's really cute ones in here. Where was the other one that I liked? It was set up as like a, oh, here it is. Like a, what do they call these again? Bumper pads? I never had these for my kids because I don't know, they always said, oh, don't put bumper pads in your kid's bed. I don't know why, but I just don't know that I would, like, if I stitch this all in a big long piece, like, what the heck would I do with it? But I love it. I think it would be really, really fun to stitch. Maybe do it in pieces and then layer them on top of each other. I don't know. But that is a contender. And then I have 2 more pieces that I'm looking at stitching. This one is, sorry, itchy face. Tea and Honey by Just Nan. And this one, what is this stitched on? So these ones, because they're constructed and because like there's like a banding that goes around. It's inside, you can't see it. There's like this banding that goes around. Because they're constructed, you typically have to use the call for 28 count linen. Okay. Anyways, this one I thought was fun. I think it would be quick to stitch up. And it's basically a table, and then you put these little, like, there's a muffin and a teacup and a teapot. I thought that was really cute. And this is out of print as well. And then the last one, which is out of print also, so I feel bad kind of for showing these, is Mary 15 by Just Nan, and it's a full kit. It's got like the pins and the fabric. And this was from the Silver Needle, and it's a 15-sided biscornu. I've never made a biscornu. Maybe I should like start with like a regular biscornu as opposed to a 15-sided one. It doesn't look hard to make, as I say from all of the experience I've had from making biscornus. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll start with a regular one first. I could just stitch up the squares on this one and then stitch like another small one, put it together just so I kind of get the hang of it, and then go back and do that one. I don't know. I'll figure it out. So that's all I have for you today. It doesn't seem like a lot after 2 months, but yeah, I've had a lot of nights where I haven't stitched. You know, we've just had basically sickness after sickness in our house the past couple months. It's exhausting by the time you go to bed at night. You're just like, or by the time you put the kids to bed at night, you're just like, I don't want to stitch. I want to stitch, I'm just too tired to stitch. So yeah, so hope everybody's doing well. Again, thank you everybody for commenting and watching my videos and welcoming me back to the Flosstube community. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I'll be back soon. It'll be, you know, whatever kind of happens. I just kind of have to depend on what's going on in my life and how much I have to show and when I can film. So anyways, take care, and I will see you again at a later date.